This was a boy named Joe who lived in a city in Nigeria near a river. At 12, he was an inquisitive and intelligent child who cherished spending time with his father, Mr. Davis. He was raised by his father after the death of his mother when he was 5. Joe held his father in high regard, considering him to be a man of strength, stability, and good humor. A role model for him was his father. However, Joe was unaware of one aspect of his father's life: his smoking habit. Like many of his friends, Mr. Davis had smoked for a long time. They smoked together whenever they were together in the house, which produced a thick cloud of cigarette smoke in the air. As his father lit cigarette after cigarette, Joe would sit close by and watch in silence. He observed the smoke as it curled from their lips and moved in the direction of the ceiling. Like it was just a part of life, it appeared so natural and unremarkable. Always the inquisitive one, Joe discovered a half-smoked cigarette on the porch one day after everyone had left. He took it up and, not knowing exactly what he was doing, imitated the actions he had so often witnessed his father and his friends perform. He ignited it, breathed in the smoke, and felt his lungs burn right away. Coughing violently, he tried again, determined to find out what his father was so fond of. Weeks stretched into days as Joe carried on his covert experiments. He started smuggling cigarettes out of his father's pack when he was not looking, and soon it turned into a regular routine. Joe developed a more aloof and tense demeanor at school, frequently finding ways to sneak away to smoke. His grades started to decline, and he started to get into problems with his teachers for not paying attention. Mr. Davis noticed something strange one evening as he was tidying up around the house. There was less in his pack of cigarettes than there should have been. He initially discounted it, believing he might have smoked more than he acknowledged. But as the days went by, he started to notice more indicators: Joe's abrupt behavior change, an unpleasant odor that persisted in his clothes, and an ashtray outside that contained more cigarette butts than normal. The realization reached Joe only when Mr. Davis happened to stroll into the backyard one day and saw him sitting behind a tree with a cigarette stuck between his fingers. He watched in dismay as his son struggled with the cigarette and coughed, just as he had when he first started years before. Mr. Davis shouted,
"Joe, what are you doing?"
rushing over and pulling the cigarette from his hand. With fear and guilt plastered all over his face, Joe looked up at his father. I saw you do it, Dad. I thought it was okay." Mr. Davis's heart sank. He was blind. How could that have happened? For years, he smoked in front of his son without considering the potential effects on him. Upon realizing that his boy had been led down this perilous path by his own actions, tears filled his eyes. Mr. Davis pulled Joe into a tight embrace and said,
"Joe, I am so sorry. I never wanted this for you. It was never my intention for you to emulate me."
Mr. Davis decided at that very moment, though he could not alter the past, he could influence the future. That evening, he threw away his pack of cigarettes and made a commitment to never smoke again. It was not simple. The habit had become ingrained and the cravings were intense, but he tried to keep Joe in mind whenever he felt the want to smoke. With his father's help, Joe started to change his life. They began spending more time together and discussing their difficulties in an honest and open manner. Over time, Joe overcame his addiction with the help of Mr. Davis's diligent efforts to become a better role model. In order to distract themselves from smoking, they would play sports, go for walks, and even take up cooking. Over time, Joe developed into a mature, capable young man. He had gained important insight into the impact of influence and no longer felt the need to smoke. Mr. Davis, too, happy with his decision to save himself and his son, he continued to abstain from smoking. dad and his son had broken the cycle together, and they were stronger now that they had faced and defeated their respective demons together. It teaches parents a very important lesson: be mindful of what your kids pick up from you. The lives of your children can be ruined by your behavior and attitudes. Big note: